Greetings, Earthling. Ooh, what are we wearing? Oh, okay. We're wearing a World Cup shirt.
Yeah, I think didn't we break the streak?
Did you wear the
We both
I
wore
don't even know what
Amazon.
the light. Did you wear that? That was last week, right?
Yeah, I believe so. These weeks all run together, man. It's just
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah. I guess that's like a light heathered gray. I don't know. I emailed the guys, hey, here's the episode this is, and they were like, we should have sent you black shirts. And I was like, I just didn't respond. But like, I was like, damn. There's black.
I know that
a black
episode was
option?
interesting. Oh yeah, yeah. The whole episode was interesting for me because I am not used to seeing you wearing anything other than black, and so it was like it was trippy.
It was trippy to me myself too. Sitting there, I'm like, what is going on? What in the goodness gracious, great balls of fire? It's wild. It is wild.
Yeah.
So we use this tool named StreamYard. That's how we get these broadcasts out. I don't know that you're seeing what I'm seeing, Tim, but like they just came out with this new increased pricing. They basically doubled the pricing. And so this is the first time I've used the tool since the increase. And so like there was all this like I guess if you want to do an intro video when you start, there's a place where you can put it and then it plays. Now they have circles or something. I think I showed you that last week. I showed the circles and stuff. But it's really interesting just to think about how do some of these companies come up with pricing and new features, how are you going to roll it out, et cetera, et cetera. It's always just
we'll have to save that question. Word on the street is a new pricing model just came out with this week's guest, so we'll have to dive into that to see how they best determine what to come out with.
You know what's funny about it is a lot of times they just roll it out and they don't really care what anyone thinks. Like Netflix just sends you an email, hey, by the way, it's gonna be $18.99
that's
now.
The whole thing though is like I bet you that maybe 2% of the population even knows how much they pay for Netflix. Same thing with Amazon Prime. Like everyone
Amazon Prime is like a one-time a year fee.
Right. And no one has any idea what they're paying. They just, they pay it.
Netflix biggest thing, my understanding, is they were trying to, let's just say, get rid of family accounts, like shared accounts, right? Where people are like, here's my password, whatever. And so when I wrote, what are you watching on Netflix? The number, literally in May, I verified it was whatever the book I think it says, like 232. From that time till now, because they changed that thing where they were getting rid of shared accounts, I think it went up like 50 million.
Well, accounts. Dude, Amazon Prime, like 2 months before your child turns 18, they're already sending emails saying once they turn 18, they got to get on their own Prime account. I mean, it's just like they're all over it.
18?
Yeah.
Damn. Good for them. I'm excited about people making money. That's wild. What do you think? What do you think about money, dollars, cheddar, or whatever the cool kids say these days? What is? I know how Ayush is correct pronunciation. We didn't ask you how to pronounce your last name. Garg.
Garg, yeah.
Okay. What do you think about money? What do the kids call money these days? What are your thoughts on money? Are you a capitalist? Do you hate the big businesses? Like, do you want to? Well, just give me your general thoughts on money 101.
Yeah, I think great question. Me and my friend were actually talking about money a few days ago because when you enter in the startup game, the motivations at the very, very start are really different from potentially what they become like 6 months in, 12 months in. So at the start, when I just started this thing, I was like, oh, wow, dude, we're going to make so much money. Money is all we care about, so on and so forth. Even coming to college, that's really what people care about. You get a college degree, you get money and everything. But I think once you enter the process of actually making an app, making a business, you start to look at money less and less like actual dollars and more like a form of exchange. So at least in my opinion, what money really is I'm trading my value that I create for someone else's value that they've created, and that sort of falls down the pipeline. So at least in my opinion, I think you deserve the value that you create for the world, and you get that in forms of money. So you can trade that money with other people for the value that they've created, and sort of is managed by the big banks. Now, Do I think companies should be massive? Am I a big capitalist? I think I'm a huge capitalist. Just in the spirit of America, everyone should be, right. But I think a smaller number of large companies and a bigger number of small companies is really what will move us to larger and more disruptive innovation. So a larger number of startups that are trying to attack diversified problems and maybe taking the bigger companies and creating smaller teams inside of them so that they're not managed like governments themselves is probably the view I have.
Tim?
I dig that. Yeah. I mean, it's always interesting. So many people share your point of view in the sense of like, oh yeah, I'm going to launch this thing, I'm going to make a ton of money. But like, man, like what you're throwing up a splash page, just like just come out of the gate, you quickly learn it is not as easy as what everyone makes it out to be.
Liar. It's easy as hell, Tim. Come on, everyone can do it. That's why they do
I
it.
don't, yeah, I don't. I mean, maybe it's just me, and maybe I'm just I'm not that bright. But like, it's just it's a grind.
How easy is a splash page these days to put up? I mean, that's got to be pretty easy, right? Because I mean, back in the day, putting together a website 15 years ago, I mean, you did still have to be somewhat technical. Maybe you had to learn WordPress, but then you had to understand like the DNS aspect. There were some challenges if you weren't even remotely tech savvy.
So yeah, I don't know. I mean, so like, you're the founder of a company called AnswerThis. How long have you been at the startup game?
Yeah. So this is like my startup that has actually, started showing some traction. We've got a couple of paying users. Before this, I actually made and broke a couple of things. Tried to make at least 5 or 6 different apps in different categories before I realized I should probably look for the place that I'm really passionate in rather than the place that would make the most money. So I ditched everything else that I was doing, on the topic of money. I ditched everything else that I was trying to do just because the market was big or this and that, and really try to focus on what was I really, really passionate about. And for me, that was sort of moving the needle on humanity's scientific progress. So took that problem and really started digging deep into it. I think the idea itself was in the roots about 3 years ago. I was working with some scientists up at the University of Cambridge, and this was our focus. Our focus was how do we move the needle on humanity's scientific progress. But then slowly and slowly, it started evolving into this idea where let's just take whatever's out in the world in terms of scientific knowledge and let's try to distill it in a format that people can actually interface with. So the app itself came around 7 months ago, but yeah, it's been in the pipeline for a long, long time.
Wow. What is your background? What's your history? Are you a technical founder? Yeah. What's your background from that standpoint?
Yeah, I was very much the technical founder when I first started off, and I think to a large degree I still am. I've had to learn business fundamentals just as something that I needed to do to make this app successful. But I love all things building, everything technology. I've sort of been at the base of everything that we've built add-ons to this and sort of the underlying infrastructures that powered the thing. So very, very much technical, but the background really starts from when I was like 13 or 14. That was the point my mother was actually completing her doctorate in chemistry. So that's when I first even started to learn about what research actually was. And I saw her spend like countless hours going through a lot of papers. So, I was just sort of shown to the process. She was taking me to her dissertation meetings. She was taking me to the guide's house when they went over her thesis and everything. So basically, I sort of lived my childhood through her PhD process. But when I turned 16 and 17, I started doing research and I was really, really interested in the field. I already had a background in computer science. So I met a professor from the University of Cambridge, and he was really passionate about the same topic. How do we create research itself in a better and faster manner? So we sort of teamed up together, got a couple other people down, created a group, and started just tackling this problem of scientific papers and how do we go through them. And this is sort of the entire background that led up to the creation of AnswerThis. When I was 18, came down to the States, and then since then on, have been trying to run the startup wheel.
How did you land in Virginia?
It's pretty funny, but University of Richmond gave me a full scholarship when I was in Singapore. So I think that was the only letter I needed to come to Virginia. But ever since I've come here, I really love the place, man. I mean, the weather here is amazing. For anyone who's not been in Virginia, and I'm sure everyone has at least heard of how beautiful Virginia is, but it really truly is very, very beautiful. We drove up from here in Richmond all the way up to New York and on the south North Carolina, and I mean the entire way is just full of natural beauty. So found myself in Virginia by a chance when I got that letter, but definitely have loved every single moment of being here.
Wow.
I'm just still, let's say, taken aback that from 13 to 17, you're hanging out with Mama Garg, and thesis and doctorate and all this like stuff, and you're like, let's go. Like, I'm all in. You weren't like a bratty little kid about it. I would have been like, like, we're not playing this game. You decided and ended up like making it your life story. Like, that's ridiculous. But kudos to you. I'm sure Mom was proud about that. So that's wild. We met at the Startup World Cup, right? You went first.
Certainly.
Did you guys go first?
Yeah.
They were the first 60-second pitcher.
Okay, and then that's what I thought. That's when Tim and I were still trying to figure out the stage mechanisms of everything. You live in, and we met afterwards, right? So like, did you say you're in some program in Richmond, but you live somewhere else, like Northern Virginia? Is that what you said?
Oh, no. So I actually live in Richmond right now, but in South Carolina, we attended a business accelerator called by the name of Riot. Amazing program, by the way. Any budding entrepreneurs, highly recommend applying to Riot. But yeah, so we attended Riot all through the duration of the summer and sort of came back to Richmond after that.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, so that dig in. Name of the company, Answer This. Give us the you don't have to give us the same 60-second pitch, but for our audience, what is Answer This, and what problem are you solving?
Yeah. So I'll just start off with a little bit of background education. Basically, every year we're publishing a lot of papers, 5 million right now to be exact, probably more. That was the last time that I checked. And the problem is we're sort of doubling the amount that we're publishing literature very quickly. So we're not only accumulating all of this past knowledge, the rate at which we're creating it also is increasing dramatically. Nothing was sort of built with this explosive growth of knowledge in mind. We see all of these databases, all of these curations, they were great till the point when papers in a particular field were only a handful and you could go through all of them. But now what is really happening is you search up your field, whichever field you're researching, and suddenly maybe 100,000 papers show up. There's no way for a scientist to be able to go through all of these papers, even a few of them in depth, and extract the knowledge out of them. So, what caused all of this boom in the knowledge that we're seeing? Technology. And now we're on the other side creating technology to distill all of the information that we've created. So AnswerThis is an AI research platform that makes it first easy to find papers, then understand and analyze them. You just sort of type in your question, and we take the entire literature review process, which used to take 6 to 8 months previously. You had to search through multiple databases, all the papers used to come out, you read through the title, you read through the abstract, you see which papers are relevant. We sort of automate all that entire process. So instead of taking 6 to 8 months, it takes you 3 to 4 hours just playing around with the platform. And then instead of you having to read through titles and abstracts and PDFs, what you get is an entire literature review composed for you, where you get a background for what you're studying. And for every paper that is relevant to your field, you get a summary for what the paper actually says about the topic that you're researching.
How does it know what to pull out?
That's a great question. And this is sort of where we stand apart from a lot of other tools. So traditionally, the mechanism for what to pull out has been PageRank, right? That's what Google built its entire foundation on. And that's what basically all of the search engines that you might use, even Instagram search, at some extent, all of them boil down to the idea of PageRank. And PageRank necessarily isn't really good. PageRank is something that carried us, through all of these years, ever since the inception of the algorithm and when Google started to take off. But it was built at a time when websites were few and sparse and knowledge was few and sparse. Internet was just beginning to take traction. Now what's happening in the field of research and other fields, there's a ton of literature on any search. So you can search a topic and there'll be like 10,000 papers that might or might not be relevant. Instead of using PageRank to determine what papers should be pulled out based on just how many other papers are referencing them, which is hugely biased and only pulls out the latest research that is actually famous and not the one that is useful and ignored. We actually take a small language model and run through the paper to gauge whether it's actually relevant to the query or not. So just like a human would read through the title and abstract and maybe the results of a paper and gauge, should I actually read this or not? A language model is doing the same thing and basically composing which paper should I actually give back to the user that they should read. So it sort of does the first preliminary reading for you and reduces our dependence on something like PageRank.
So where do you get your data from to feed your LLM, so to speak? Like, do the authors submit it to you, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's another cool thing about AnswerThis actually. So the way that we've built it does real-time vectorization, and it's a fancy word for saying we sit on top of databases, and every time they index a new paper, the paper immediately becomes available to AnswerThis because we're sort of refreshing those databases every single time a person puts in their query. The cool thing about science is that there's two movements, one that I really like and one that I'm battling with. The one that I really like is the open source movement, which sort of makes all of the papers that are published under this license completely open for anyone to access. Now, this side is pretty strong and has convinced the other side, which is all the paywall articles, to actually release their titles and abstracts in the public. So now we have this huge collection of metadata of basically everything that's ever been published, and it gets available to us through repositories like EuroPubMed Central and Archive and Semantic Scholar. So basically what we do is we go to these repositories, we ask them for their papers, and we just have AnswerThis sit on top of them, answering questions based on the knowledge that these folks are collecting and accumulating. At some point, I definitely want to think about the problem of how science is pretty unbalanced and how publishers are not necessarily the best people in the world. They take a lot of money for publishing a paper, and you have to actually pay to get access to them. So it's a very heavily one-sided bias market. But that's a problem that I'm not solving for now, and I'm sort of pushing down the can to solve in the future.
So if I understand this right, is this like next generation, like LexisNexis that you're doing?
Yeah, the big long-term vision, and I've not shared it publicly a lot, but the big long-term vision is to sort of displace how search is done. If you search any topic in the world, you might go through 20 websites to find what you need, or you might go through 4, or you might go through AI. But basically, at the end, what you're doing is you're pulling information from a lot of different disjointed sources. Now, what is happening with the rise of AI, and it's a macro trend that we're seeing, is I talked about the doubling of information and how it's happening very quickly. Ever since language models became accessible to the public, that rate has actually skyrocketed. So we were already producing much more information than before because everyone had access to the internet now and everyone was readily posting stuff. But now with the advent of AI, people are doing that at an enormous rate, enough to actually break the entire essence of how internet works. In this kind of a situation, what becomes really important is to have a central interface that interacts with curated knowledge bases. And I think the long-term vision of AnswerThis is to become this knowledge interface channel where you have all of these curated databases in the world. And scientific research is a great example of a curated database, but it's very applicable for other fields as well. And AnswerThis can just sit on top and provide interactive dashboards for you to interact with this knowledge instead of having to go through multiple websites and pulling information from all of these different disjointed sources.
Do you think that is there going to be a time that OpenAI or Gemini, or that they're going to want to scrape your data? I guess that might be a success indicator. If they're trying to get your data, because your data is from other people's data, and then that's just a consolidated repository. No.
Yeah, I think one day, maybe what will happen first is they actually take our algorithm. So it's very funny what these people are in the business for, right? You think about the model that ChatGPT is running on, the business model, not really the actual model. But their business model is actually just creating these architectures, making them publicly available, and developers like me interacting with them and sort of giving them API money. So more and more, what's going to happen is their leverage is going to be data. But for all of our smaller companies, the leverage is going to be actually the architecture and what we do with the models that these guys make available. But if any of these companies that are in this realm create an architecture that's provable enough, I think what will happen and what's probably going to happen is they're going to take the infrastructure in so that their data processing gets much better. Yeah, so it's a funny game that we're in. No one even thought about how AI is going to be monetized 5 years ago, but it's a funny time now where OpenAI just said, I think, what, $100 billion plus evaluation. So different times.
Yeah.
Hmm.
What did you
What?
say? 100 billion?
Yeah, if I'm not wrong, I think
I,
they just
I,
closed
I
their
think
round.
I think they just closed at 154 billion yesterday at the
Wow.
time of this recording.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's it's sort of ridiculous. And what's funny to me is how quickly the space is growing. OpenAI was sort of the only competitor when it first came out, and that in itself was a huge advancement, right? No one even knew that AI was a thing before OpenAI came in and took the world by storm. But now there's so many open models available, and Facebook is doing great stuff in this area, and Microsoft is as well, where they're just sort of releasing models into the public that I don't know how long this business model is going to be viable for, but they can charge for API
Well,
access.
I
Let's
mean
see. It's going to be very interesting.
that is the interesting thing, because like all everyone doing is just mining everyone else's data, and then eventually you need to continue to feed that funnel with new information. Otherwise, you're just going to be refining all the old stuff over and over again. So I think that you probably play a really critical piece, because you're like top of funnel when it comes to research papers.
Yeah, certainly. And the other thing is, in the AI space, basically what we're seeing is there's a lot of incremental improvement. Every company is sort of fighting for that 5% margin in terms of accuracy and cost right now, where, they're all sort of fighting to make their model 5% better. Because that 5% over this huge market that has sprung up is a lot. You save someone 5% in token cost, you make something 5% more accurate. There you go. You've unlocked all of this margin that was available just because of the sheer size of the market. I think where we differ is we're not fighting for the 5 or 10%. What we're really saying is let's sort of rethink how this industry is being operated, right? There's great ideas that have come about before this entire AI hype cycle began. And let's sort of step away from the picture a little bit instead of focusing on improving these models by maybe 5 or 10%. Let's just go back to the basic whiteboard. What we're really trying to do is distill ideas into something that users can interface with. How can we create better architectures to do this entire process instead of making models that are just slightly more accurate?
Hmm.
Yeah, I can nerd out on this, but Zach,
Oh, so
if
you're
you
really
want to.
into the robots, Tim?
Well, I'm just into this whole this cycle of AI right now is just really, really interesting stuff, and
Hmm.
to watch it all play out.
Is it the
I
demise of
mean,
society?
well, I mean, it's just like there's just so many different things in terms of like open system versus closed, and how you continue to feed your model, and the amount of money that it takes for these just to buy all of these servers from Nvidia, like that whole thing. It's just the power comes into it. It just all of it is super fascinating, and how it's all going to play out.
Hmm. Do you think it crashes? Do you think this goes away? You think this is the future? Like, I don't know. I think the robots
Well,
are a pretty scary thing, and I know I say this all the time, but I've watched iRobot many a time, and I know Will Smith won in that game. But I don't know. I feel like we are creating our own deathbed, and somehow it's going to figure it out. And watch out. Maybe not in our lifetime, but like,
I mean, really, to me, I mean, everything is just going to come down to energy. Yeah, and we have got to produce more energy. And so, like, we have to leverage solar, we have to leverage battery storage, we have to leverage nuclear. It's all going to come down to energy to fuel these data centers so that they can churn out the amount of the amount of power that is needed to run these queries and to give the results that are being created is just huge. It's huge amounts of power. And like right now, like China is like, dude, they are building so many nuclear plants right now because they know if they decrease the cost of power that they're gonna run the table on the AI side of the house. And then that there's big implications when it comes to that. I don't know. What are your?
I didn't know you were such a nerd about this, Tim.
Well, it's the future, man. I mean, it's
Your
just
words.
there's no, it's the future. So what's your take?
Yeah, it's really funny. There's just so many different opinions and thoughts that are flying around. I think all of them have basis, in at least a lot of different facts. I mean, the crazy thing is, I think no one can tell, right? That's the conclusion that everyone is making right now. No one can really tell. The amount of progress that we've seen in like the last 1 year has been smaller than what we saw in the last 5 years, but it's still way more than we would have expected any time in our lives. Like, it's crazy. We're sort of normalizing insane levels of progress just because we're now used to seeing them. So people always talk about AGI. I think that's a very interesting thought experiment for anyone to go down on, right? Like, what if we just generalize intelligence and make it available to the public instead of one brain and a human operating with the capacities they're limited to? All of us have to eat. You only really work like 5 to 6 hours a day. There's only a certain number of them. If, let's say, you take the same thing and put it on data centers, now you've unlocked basically tremendous level of intelligence that keeps self-improving. I don't know if we should allow that really to happen, right? At that point, you're essentially replacing the role of what humans were supposed to do. But at the same time, do I think that's going to happen in the next like 5 years? Probably not. These models are probably going to get better. And I think there's going to be a huge wave of startups and companies that are built on just exploring what's available to us now. But I'm
What
not
do
really
you?
sure how much movement we'll have in the entire intelligence of these models in the next like 5 or 6 years.
What do you think? What industry do you think is going to experience the greatest impact due to AI and the ability to run? To me, I think that it's healthcare. I mean, just in terms of just taking cancer for example. I mean, to be able to run thousands and thousands, millions of queries and scenarios to just in terms of how you identify, treat, or cure cancer, prevent cancer. I mean, like it would take humans. I mean, I don't know how long have humans been after it right now. You know, and
Some say
I
they
don't,
already have the solution.
well, I don't. Yeah, when I put my tinfoil hat on, I don't doubt that either. But I think healthcare is going to experience great improvement.
Yeah, yeah, healthcare is certainly, I mean, what really slowed down healthcare was a lot of different studies were coming out. And first of all, it takes a long time to do a study. I think it takes like 5 or 7 years and that's now to get your drug passed on to human trials. And back in the day, it used to take even longer. So all of this process takes a long time, and there's a ton of literature about this entire process. That's sort of why we're solving this problem. But there's nothing really right now to take all of this information and distill it into basically finding what is the actual consensus of the field. We're relying on a lot of human diligence. I think when this process in itself, what sort of our mission is, gets automated, we're going to move the needle on fields like medicine really quickly. Now you know that, okay, well, this entire field has come to this conclusion, and this is the main idea that we're dangling on, and this entire field has come to this different conclusion. How do we marry these ideas? That's really what humans are going to need to think about, instead of having to actually walk down these chain and come up with what these big ideas and how they're linking to themselves are. um, just on this topic, also want to sort of talk about how we interact, right? There's only really four types of ways that we interface with knowledge. You either ask just a simple yes or no question, or you summarize a lot of different knowledge, or you actually create inferences over large amounts of data. Sort of the medicine example that you gave about. The first two are sort of what Google and Microsoft Copilot and all of the other systems that we see are after. These are huge, huge markets. This is really what is at scale. Everyone, asks yes or no questions. Everyone summarizes knowledge for different things. This third field is, in my opinion, the most impactful, because even though there's probably lesser number of people that fall into this category, their impact is insane. And this is where medicine, healthcare, legals, consultants, all of these professions lie. I think once we figured this third problem out, and that's sort of the space that we're operating in right now, once we figure out how to do long and complex inference over sort of large amounts of data, I think then everything else that's sort of behind that starts clicking in like Lego pieces. And in terms of impact, no field, in my opinion, will be left that doesn't get touched. And everyone was afraid 20 years ago that all of like our blue collar jobs will get replaced. I think it's definitely the other way around. All of the professional thinking, that's definitely going to come first, because these models are great at pretending at least that they think and their conclusions are good enough. But then maybe the least amount of progress will be seen in natural, like manual labor, where humans have to move their hands. Artists, painters, people who clean, people who cook. Those are probably going to be later advancements. But everything else will definitely get touched upon in the next like 3 to 5 years.
I was talking to one of my lawyer friends, and he was saying that the robots are actually creating fake cases in some of the models and stuff. So I don't know. I tend to think that we're really far away. There's a lot of trust issues in here on certain fields that we're gonna have to get through. If that's happening in legal, and that's just legal, how do you handle that with healthcare?
I think the thing is, though, man, is that like we can't truly comprehend like the speed of exponential growth. Like that so we only can grow as fast as like our human brain can grow, but like exponential growth when it comes to this type of technology, I mean,
but if it's based on lies and things that are being created that aren't true, because it's already happening in just legal cases, right? And I'll just use that as an example.
That and that's just tweaking your guardrails and your data set.
You hope.
Well,
now I get to play devil's advocate on you.
Yeah, but that's BS, man. I mean, it's just that you're not going to stay in business if you're going to have hallucinations. I mean, I think that
what if a lawyer is going through this and he's reading the court cases and he's like, where is this? And they're fact checking and they're like, this case doesn't exist. And he realizes that.
That's what I'm saying. That business is out there. That's not going to stay in business very long. I mean, like that's going to self-eliminate. And I think that even on the AnswerThis website, you specifically make mention to zero hallucinations, so like the quality of that data is really, really important.
Okay, so we're not going on any Aaron Rodgers ayahuasca trips for the hallucinations and the robots. Okay, I got it. All right.
Yeah.
Do you watch sports?
I wish I got to watch as much sports as I did back in high school, but time is sparse right now in between college and AnswerThis. So
well, I didn't know if you understood that reference, so I apologize, but I know Tim did.
No, but I think the concerns are really valid. This entire thing about hallucinations, people are using the wrong engines for the wrong purposes, right? It's like using butter to make everything that's available in cooking. You're substituting butter for avocado oil. You're substituting butter for olive oil. ChatGPT has made butter, right? It's great. It tastes great. It's largely applicable, but you can't use it for everything.
Right, and because would you consider AnswerThis? It's a verticalized solution, no? And I think the next wave of AI is going to be verticalized solutions.
What does that mean?
You have
to specializing in one vertical. So, like you have ChatGPT, that they specialize in tax. You're going to have legal that specializes in legal. AnswerThis is going to specialize in research papers. You're going to have specializations.
Yeah, and sort of the other thing in this entire field is all of the models that people interface with right now, they sort of make the claim that they're not intelligent or they're not able to do math or anything of this nature. They need to realize that these models are text models. They're not meant to give you legal documents in return. They're not meant to give you mathematical equations in return. What they're really meant to be good at is writing stuff. If you ask it to write a story, oh my God, will it produce some creative stuff time to time? You ask it to write a poem, and there it goes, right? You ask it to write an essay. Don't even wanna be upfront about how many times I've asked it to write all my class essays. But no, the thing is, these are textual
Your
models, and
professors
they're
are listening.
yeah.
Well,
Sorry,
yeah, and that's where we can go next. I mean, is there pushback in terms of can students go to answers this and then be like, hey, man, I'm gonna, this is, is there a threat of that happening, or what feedback have you received?
Yeah, it's really interesting. As with all the things in AI, right? But professors are really embracing it. I think in their mind, and actually, we just got featured, I think about 4 days ago, by one of the biggest influencers in our space. He has about 300,000 subscribers in the field. But really, after that, and even before that, what really the outlook of professors has been is if we don't teach our students to use this tool, they're sort of going to get left behind when they actually get to
Yep.
work, because it's great if they're actually reading the literature right now. But professors know that there's just too much literature. It's a real problem. And when
Yep.
you solve a real problem, I think the doubts start to lessen. So if it's something that people are already frustrated with, and then you go in and solve that, the pushback is much less than if I took, let's say, academic essays and made those easier to write. All that AnswerThis does is it finds, analyzes, and understands research papers. The entire research process is still left for the researcher to do. So all we're doing is solving like the top of the funnel issue right now. And that's something that Google Scholar does, just way worse, and gives more inaccurate results. So for them, it's really like a drop-in substitute for a thing that they were insanely frustrated with. And yeah, they're sort of embracing it right now. Everyone that I've talked to is very keen on integrating AnswerThis into their classes, and that's sort of the phase of the project that we're on right now.
Yeah, that's great to hear, because preventing people from using the tools that are available to them is that's not the answer, in my opinion. You will be left behind.
It's like not letting someone use a calculator, right? Like, why would you? Back in the day, that used to be the
I was
case.
just thinking the same thing.
Yeah, it brings me back to business school. We have to grind manually through our macro econ class, macro micro econ classes. It's like,
Yeah, you have that calculator
here's
that
your,
can do it for you.
well, and then he's like, oh, and in your inbox, and you have all the spreadsheets, scheduled to be sent to you. And now in your inbox is the spreadsheet to do all this for you. It's like, but I get that you have to understand what goes into the calculations, so that you can do it. But
How old are you, Ayush?
19 right now. Actually, no, sorry, just turned 20. Can't forget about my birthday. Yeah, just turned 20.
All right, wow. Okay. Did they teach you handwriting?
like
No.
cursive?
No, I've been told that they stopped cursive and handwriting. They stopped doing it. They don't teach that anymore. That's what I heard. I don't know. Is that
Yeah,
true?
I don't remember the last time
Cursive definitely out.
I turned something in paper.
How do you sign it? Well, forget it.
How do you
no one
sign a
writes a
letter?
check
No,
anymore.
we're not.
Well, now I was going to say, how do you sign a check? But no one uses a check. So how do you
Yeah,
No,
there's
that's not
Venmo
true,
now.
Tim. You wrote a check last week.
I know, but that's that was to save a couple
understand.
percentage points for you. I don't
But the thing is like when you write a check, you always have to look at the date, because you got like what year, and you write 21. You're like, oh damn, 3 years like behind. Like I'm screwed.
20 years old. That's really impressive.
Yeah, 19 felt very long.
Nice.
It was the year with all of the startup stuff, so it definitely felt insanely long. And now I'm 20, so a little bit scared, slowly starting to enter the real world. But it's
Where
been
are you
fun.
right now?
I'm actually in my university apartment.
Okay, I was thinking, and that's your apartment. Oh, okay. It looked
Yeah.
like a school. I was okay. Or is it like a picture background? You never know.
Yeah, back in the background, what you see is a whiteboard, and we've written down our entire sales process on it. You can't see it clearly right now because my background's blurred, but that's where we were brainstorming how do we sell to institutions, and above there is like a redoing of our interface. So yeah, it's sort of crazy times. There's like whiteboards all around the house right now. Um, there's probably a lot of different scraps if you come and see on the floor of notes flying around, but yeah,
So
it's fun and exciting times.
from a marketing and sales standpoint, you're going to top to bottom versus bottom to top.
We're doing both actually. So
Hmm.
going from bottom to top is really what gives enough traction at the top for there to be a decision to be made.
Right.
um, just initially, right, our entire user acquisition strategy was let's create a product that solves this problem of literature review. We knew that there was traction about the field. There were tools that came before us and educated the market. So we're not the first to market, but we're sort of capitalizing on all of the education that these tools provided. What they were missing on is really what the users were asking, which is how do we automate this entire literature review process. So the field was already educated. We came in, we offered the solution, and the first point of action was let's just create paid subscriptions and see how many people subscribe. And let's give them free options as well, just so that we have traction building up. When that process started going, suddenly what we see now is maybe 100 students from a school sign up. When that happens, and part of it is because we market to the professors, and the professors tell it to their students. The students talk to each other and everything. It's a lot of word of mouth. But once we hit a critical mass, actually the people at the top of the universities, they hate the control being taken away. Imagine half of your organization using a tool that you have no idea about. Say, well, so they want to retain that control. Answer this for them, like the people at the top is not really a research expense as much as it is a control expense. So they pay us to retain the control, at least some level of it, so that they can manage how the users are in this university are using the app. But yeah, we're seeing tons of traction between professors, students, and graduate students across
That's super
different
smart.
universities across the states.
Just as slow as higher ed moves, you have to take both approaches. Otherwise, it's a long sales cycle.
Yeah,
Why do we
and
trust them so much if they're so behind? Higher ed.
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just asking you to repeat that. My headphone just cut off.
So knowing that higher ed and school systems are behind, why do we trust them and put so much power in their hands?
I mean, me personally, I think that yeah, they have to. They are to reflect. They have to change right now. Like right now, like they're calling this generation the is it the blue collar generation? I think is what the and numbers are dropping right now. Like admissions into higher ed is the lowest that it has been in quite some time. So they have to evolve.
Good.
I agree. I mean, it's just you
Look, I loved my time at West Virginia. I have nothing bad to say about the settings, but like, I don't know. I feel like I learned. I think I've told you a story. Like, I have a journalism degree. Had some classes in how to get on TV and say hi, welcome. This is Zach Miller. Let me tell you this story. Change your voice and sound like a schmuck. But anyway, you learn that, and then you do all that, and then you realize you actually go out in your first week on the job, you learn more than you did for the last 5 years, and you're like, what did I just spend all this money on when all I could have done is just knocked on the door and said, hi, can you teach me something? And maybe I could have like made coffee and figure that out on my own, because I don't know. Like, and I wonder if people in my world are like, if I'm just the only one who sees it like that, but like, that ain't worth it, and now this is out, so now everyone's a journalist. Maybe it's journalism is just a stupid degree, but I don't know. It's definitely
Yeah.
Like, how many classes did you take in your MBA, Tim, that actually you think are valid?
Yeah, I mean, I'll never be an accountant. I understand it. The micro and macroeconomics, that was, I mean, that just was, man, that was a ball buster for me. I struggled. And so I understand the concept,
Did you have to take
but
electives, or does MBAs
we,
get rid of that crap?
no, so I went through a cohort through the executive program. So as a class, we had to decide. And we did entrepreneurship, which when I look back now, it was kind of, we learned how to do, we went over like dilution,
A SWOT
super,
analysis, BS.
super, well, dilution in terms of cap table.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was super light, but the negotiation class I thought was really, really valuable.
One of my favorite books is on negotiations.
Because
Christopher
it's not
Voss,
like,
I think.
yeah, it's so much more to, hey, $100, no, $50, all right, 75 deal. I mean, it's just you really need to know what your like reservation price, and really comes down to when it comes down to numbers, it takes emotion out of it, and
Was there a psychology class in yours?
No, we went through. I think the closest we did was like organizational behavior.
But don't you think psychology should have been in there? Because like psychology is like this maybe the most important thing in understanding people from a business perspective on all aspects of it. Your teammates, your leadership team, your customers, and getting them to tick. Yet they don't teach that in business school.
I don't know. I mean, it's just I think that there's definitely yeah. I mean, there's certainly EQ and IQ involved for sure.
Now you're using acronyms and I have no idea what you're talking about, Tim. I mean, that was last week, 2 weeks ago. Like I thought we were done with this Navy stuff. Come on.
EQ and IQ,
I know
emotional intelligence. Yeah. All right.
It's so funny on like this topic because you talked about how journalism might be, what they call a stupid major, but I'm in computer science, and I can comfortably say that I definitely haven't learned anything that I actually learned in my 3 years before college when I was
Stupid
building
major.
software.
Computer science is a stupid major.
I'll have to agree. I mean, there's so much
You
on
said it,
YouTube.
not me. I'm repeating it. Like that's the topic. That's what we're gonna put as the thumbnail in here. Ayush Garg on computer science majors being dumb. Well,
Yeah, and I'll give you another example. So I'm taking finance right now just because I'm doing a business minor. And in the finance class, yeah, there were a few bugs that came in to answer this or whatever. I was focusing on the actual app itself, and the midterm rolls around, and like, all right, so I haven't paid attention in class because I was focusing on answer this. I know what the syllabus is supposed to be. How do I actually learn? I go on YouTube. There's like 50,000 videos on the topic, and they have to survive. They have to create good content to survive. I go through the top four, and that's really all I study for the midterm, and I do great. Not having paid attention in the class at all. So in my opinion, the entire college model, the higher ed model, we're sort of dependent on it. I think it's here to stay at least for slightly longer. But at least I'm not recommending any of my fellow friends who are younger to go through the same process. If they want to do something, do it. There's no need to go through this entire 4-year process just for you to begin. You can begin at any point. I know entrepreneurs who are 16 and who are just learning right now. They're failing and learning. And I would say that it's much better to fail 3 companies, learn, and then create the 4th one that goes big rather
if
than
you want to
spend
go
your
into
time.
starting a company, yeah.
Yeah, if you're just starting a company. So if that's your goal, if entrepreneurship is your goal, then I think maybe starting and failing companies is going to be a way better of a learning trajectory than taking an entrepreneurship class in college.
I've never taken a trade school.
No, go ahead.
I don't have a trade school. I haven't been to a trade school. I would assume that's like welding and the blue collar stuff that you were talking about earlier, Tim. But those are a lot shorter, right? I'm sure there's no BS electives, right? The BS electives to me in schools are what schools are, banking on, because they're basically like, oh, take these extra credits, these 6 to 12 extra credits every semester so that we can basically make all this extra money. And then you never use that. I mean, I've taken Spanish 101 6 times, still only know hola. Like, maybe that's just me being an idiot, but like, it's wild. And I agree. There's so much more that you can do in the way that you said. And I don't know. Education is incredibly important. Learning is incredibly important, but that vehicle, like, I don't know.
Yeah, and they're tough customers as well. I'll say that higher education is a very tough customer to sell to. The only really reason why we picked higher education is because they are the hardest. Once you solve the problem for them, everything else starts clicking in place. Especially on like the technology side, you fix research, you get everything else sort of for free. You get legal documents for free. You get consultancy documents for free. But yes, higher ed is notoriously difficult to work with.
Shifting topics, I'm super impressed. How did you find out about the Startup World Cup?
Yeah, let's see. I think one of my mentors so one great thing that came out of college for me at least, and this is my last year now. One great thing that came out was I met this
Last year, you're 19.
20.
Okay, still like, what? I can't handle this. I gotta leave. When did you start? When you were 15?
I mean, I come from, I did my high school in Singapore, and there you sort of had to do well and take a lot of credits to be competent. So I'm happy that I had to suffer through that so I can finish college early on now.
I'm glad Tim's face was the same reaction as mine. It's like, I think I was 23 when I graduated. Jeez, like,
yeah, I think I was 30 when I finished my undergrad.
Well, there is a mentor that I really value, Sumaya and Andrew, actually two of them, that have sort of been with me through this process really since the first day that I started college. I happened to meet her by chance. I love the idea of serendipitous actions happening when you give them enough time. So I came across her, and we just started off as something really simple. Let's just create like a hackathon together. The hackathon never really came about, but what did come about was amazing mentorship through this entire startup journey. And then eventually I connected with the folks over at Riot, and they became great mentors and everything. But yeah, I got the invitation to apply to Startup World Cup from there. And they've played an immense role, this entrepreneurship department, and the entire growth of their startup. Not really classes in general, but the professors and people they have, amazing folks.
Well, I give you so much credit because so you applied, and it was just based on the stage of where you were with the company, that you weren't far enough along to be in the top 10. But then Zach and I, when we were going over what we wanted to do for that evening, we wanted to add different things, and we threw the 60-second pitch things into the mix because we wanted to essentially double the amount of exposure that we can give to Virginia-based companies. And with that, you had such a strong application. Yeah.
Okay.
With that, we sent out the invite to, hey, would you be interested in doing a 60-second pitch? And you obviously said yes, because you drove from Richmond to Virginia Beach for 60 seconds. And like that speaks volumes in terms of the dedication, determination that you have, because you just don't know what can happen when you answer the call. You raise your hand, and
That's it. Raise your damn hand. Like,
we had people locally that turned down that opportunity. I suspect if they would have been accepted into the top 10 to pitch, they would have said yes, but the 60-second, no. Whereas, so like you leveraged that opportunity, you gained exposure from here to Silicon Valley to hundreds and hundreds of people. So, my credit goes out to you for raising your hand and taking advantage of that opportunity.
But even just from that perspective, Tim, just to piggyback on it, like now you could say that you've been on the stage with these companies, even if you're not there yet, but you can put yourself in that, you can associate yourself with that company. When you're talking about PageRank earlier, right? That's the exact same thing as a Google search. It's like association with other big brands. Okay, well now you've done that. So now they're looking at you as that top dog or closer to a top dog. Like, I don't know. More people should raise their damn hand. It's not hard.
Yeah, I have to 100% agree. I think too many people spend a lot of time thinking rather than doing. I see all of these classes, webinars, whatever, and they start off with this idea of let's just think this through. Let's think and think and think, and they think for a long, long time. I've seen some people create like 50-page documents on how their entire business will be structured and how they're going to do everything down to the actual page, but they haven't made anything yet. All of this is just on paper. And I asked them the question, what's the credit of having all these papers lying around? Instead, why don't you just take the time, build a landing page, show it out to the public, and see if your idea even has merit or not? Just sell the damn thing before you even build it. Right? Go to your customers, talk to them, and see what their reaction is to what you're saying, gauge what they actually want. So I think there should be a lot of merit that should be kept on like actually doing and building things rather than planning and planning and planning, or just thinking or not even taking action. I pitched at Riot's demo day the other day, right? And people showed up, people didn't show up. It was, in my mind, sort of the closure to Riot. Obviously, I had to go and pitch. But what ended up happening from a small event like that was that we got connected with a large number of investors who are in sort of that ecosystem, and all of them have been showing heavy interest into the tool itself. So you never know what comes out of these opportunities. Obviously, don't waste your time doing mindless networking that goes nowhere. Build your tool, focus on your customers, but then at the same time, gauge how much serendipitous action can come out of a conversation and go through them.
Damn, Tim, this entire time, did you know that Ayush was a preacher?
No, but he's preaching, man. He's preaching. With that, so we teased a little bit that you monetized your product. Touch on that? How did you make the determination to turn on the monetization? How did you pick your price? Bring it. We have to follow through it and go full circle with that.
Yeah, it's been a fun and interesting journey. I will still say pricing is very difficult, and I don't know if I've cracked pricing yet. But we started off by saying what is the value associated with something like this, and there's only two or three ways you can do this. You can either gauge the time that it takes for the user to do what you were doing, and you're automating, and you put a price to that, or you see the value that comes out of what you've created itself and how much it sells for, and see the price of that. Or the third one, which is the easiest, the route that I picked, just see the competitors and see how much they're charging. So that sort of became our baseline. We started off at $10. Always wanted to have a paid plan. I think a lot of companies are out there with a lot of traction but not making any money. We didn't want to be one of those companies, so we sort of built the entire product with a sustainable business model in mind. But then when I noticed that people were willing to pay $10, I sort of went back to the drawing board and saw how much more can we get from the user? Like, how much would they be willing to pay for something like this? And soon, through a lot of just competitive analysis and asking our users how much would they be willing, all of them came to the conclusion that they wouldn't mind paying $30 for the product, just to have it as another agent in their entire toolkit. So we gave them a little bit of discount, but $22 is where it stands now. And anyone who comes in subscribes to this $22 model.
I mean, yeah. If you look at
A
this
month?
from a student standpoint, is it 22 a month? At $22 a month, from a student standpoint, minimum wage is what, $12, $15 an hour? So if you can save 2 hours of your life per month, then the product paid for itself. I mean, that's to me, I determine everything based on what I perceive my hourly rate to be. And if I can, to me, that seems pretty fair. Yeah, that would be a no-brainer.
Yeah, and the fun thing that actually happened was I think I mentioned it briefly 3 days ago. A YouTuber in the field mentioned us. But what happened was we got all of these early adopters who were already vetted out for our entire space rushing to the platform. And what we've been noticing is that people are actually very, very fine with paying 22, to the extent that they're actually paying 122, which is sort of our yearly pricing or whatever. It's close to that amount. So it's sort of that range where people don't really think before making that decision, and I think that's what we like the most. People don't really think before they buy this product. If they're seeing enough value, they just click subscribe, and the $22 pricing doesn't really throw them off.
One thing that I have found, and hopefully you don't have to worry about churn, but if you do have to, but with churn, the best company in the world make it just as easy to pause or cancel the subscription as it is to sign up. And I think the same holds true for the worst companies out there. You can sign up online with one click, but gosh forbid if you want to cancel that thing, it requires 10 phone calls, 20 minutes each, and they're still trying to keep you as a customer.
72 days beforehand.
Yeah, I mean, I just have no patience for companies like that. It makes me crazy. Whereas the good ones, it's like, if you want to pause, and then we'll make it just as easy for you to reinitiate when it's time.
Yeah, certainly. And we talked about money. Like, it doesn't really matter at this stage how much money we're making or how many subscriptions we have. What really does matter is from all of the paid users that are coming in, we're learning from them about what their feedback is, what they're telling us. If they're canceling, I think that to me is a great data point as well. If they're canceling,
100%.
why are they canceling? What are they canceling for?
Man, this is a fast hour. We didn't even. There's a whole lot more that we could get into, but I'm really, really impressed with what you've been able to do and the fact that you've been able to do all of this in 20 short years.
Yeah, thank you so much. First of all, for Startup World Cup, I think the event was amazing. Got to hear about companies all throughout Virginia. This kind of an exposure within the community is great. I think at some point, Virginia is probably going to be up there with even states like California in terms of its startup progress. A lot of companies, even the Richmond region, are doing amazing things in this entire space. So thank you guys for bringing exposure to young companies like ours and highlighting them on a platform. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, we definitely have to schedule something for, I don't know, 6 months, a year from now, just to see where this goes and what progress that you continue to see. And for me, I wish you all the very best and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much as well. Love to be on the show.
See you soon.
All right.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks, everybody.
Like, download, subscribe, whatever you're supposed to do. I don't know.